Like we have had an art education, and we've looked at a lot of contemporary art. We've looked at a lot of historical art. So we are, yeah. I mean, I think it's fair to put us into a sort of Western tradition of art making, But that said, it's not like all of our influences and all of the things that we grew up on were coming from art history in the classical sense. I mean, you know, I don't know, we were
reading comics,
Ninja Turtles,
watching
like,
TV,
you know,
playing in the backyard.
Music was huge for both of us, like punk rock, grunge, Pearl Jam, Nirvana. These are my influences.
I wasn't even inspired by art. I didn't even know what that was. I was just,
neither of us were.
I always wanted to play with LJ, and I like Dungeons and
We
Dragons.
both hunted for frogs and tadpoles. That was
we didn't hunt them to eat them.
No.
Just to raise them into frogs and then release them.
Drawing and painting are linked with travel. I think painting and drawing are ways of embodying a world, and it's an act of creation as well as exploration. You're kind of creating this world and you're traveling through it simultaneously. Drawing is definitely connected with traveling because it's connected with line, and line is moving from a place to a place. So I think, you know, even if you look at vectors, you know, when a plane leaves from here to here, that's a drawing, that's a line. Jet trails in the sky, that kind of stuff. I think it's very connected with line. I've always had this fascination with big vistas and cityscapes, and where there's so much information that you couldn't possibly transcribe it all through drawing, but just doing my best and trying to get as much information down as possible. And then there's these huge kind of smoke bubbles that are coming off of the city, and I thought of that as just being like pollution or noise or something that's kind of just emanates from every city.
This was made by painting my skin with gesso. You can see my hip and my leg and my shoulder and forearm and my face and my ear and the hair on my head. And then on black paper, so they're white body prints on black paper that I later drew into with white ink. And at this time I was drawing a lot of creatures that were part human, part non-human animals. And I think that I was wanting to experience metamorphosis, and this was helping me to imagine what it would be like to be a different being. And I've always been working with grayscale and black and white, but part of that interest is night vision and also altered perception. So what do things look like if I had a different pair of eyes than I've got? But I'm again trying to imagine other places and other beings. If I couldn't draw, I would write. If I couldn't write, I would draw. If I couldn't do either, I'd probably play guitar. This impulse to get this thing out is there no matter what creative activity I'm up to. I'm not sure if it's just my own subjective experience of the world, but I feel like I'm always in my artwork trying to, I'm most happy when I make something that has an amount of intention and an amount of chance happening at once and blending together. And I think that that's how my experience of life is. There's things that I do on purpose, and then there's things that just happen. There's things I control, there's things I can't. And when I can make a piece of work that has both of those qualities to it, it comes alive to me in a way. It has a presence that I can believe somehow. And there's no better way of losing your control than bringing in like 100 little kids to go and do what they want to. But as that project in Banff was going along, Matt and I were sitting on top of ladders at 4 a.m. daydreaming about what we would do next time, feeling pretty tired. And we thought, we've never done a massive collaboration, just the two of us. We always have at least a couple other people involved, if not hundreds of other people. And so we thought, what would it be like? Because we'd learned a lot through all these processes of working with all these other people. It's probably the fastest way to learn a lot of new drawing techniques and approaches than collaborating with lots of people, because you just have to adapt all the time. And so we thought we would love to do, next time, let's do one with just the two of us. And a few weeks later, we got a phone call from the museum getting offered to be in the triennial. So we knew what we wanted to do already, and they liked our idea okay. They have art classes and community programs in which there were tons of kids and grown-ups to working with one another without us, but they could come and see our work and know about how we work and get some inspiration from that. And meanwhile, we're in the museum with special permission just to have a vessel full of water to wash our brushes and all of this ink and graphite dust and all of this stuff, huge scaffolding and tons of hazards, yes, which couldn't be there during regular public hours.
But also, I think just the expansiveness of the space itself being so big, the walls being so tall, lead to more expansive imagery, and even the way that we draw is there's no corners really in this space. There's curved corners, so there's no interruption really, except for at the end, the passageway through. So I think that there's no need to stop your line anywhere until you get to the end. So that it just changes the nature of how we draw. I think the imagery itself is more expansive because of that.
But I think because we work there at night when no one else is there, it's just me and Matt. We're kind of on a little adventure together. You know, it's very intimate, and it feels like the best studio I can imagine. 15-foot tall walls with curved corners. It's awesome. We have tons of space. We've got all of our equipment there. So I am not really conscious. I'm not thinking, oh, I'm in the museum, I'm in the museum. People are going to look at this. I can get completely lost in the drawing, and basically it's really peaceful time. Yeah. Yeah, in this case, we're trying to make well, I guess it gets into stuff, process versus final product. I'd like to get rid of the verses between it because they're just different sides of something that's important to me. It's all the art. But in this case, we really do care about the process and the finished drawing. We want it, or the drawing process, we want it to be, we're trying to make the best drawing we can. And our criteria for that is partly to make it to make it a universe, this place where you can travel around and find different things and be really difficult to see it all. And that you can travel, there's passages, there's lines of white space and black space and gray space and flows everywhere, so you can keep circulating through this place. So that you'll travel too with your eyes and your body as you walk through it.
And there's all kinds of scale shifts that happen too. For instance, there's this little city that's like on the sort of nose of the sperm whale. And what that does is you can, from a distance, you see that it's there and you see all these little details, but you can't really travel through it until you walk right up to it. So it forces the viewer to sort of really walk back and forth and to sort of discover these different scales within the piece. And there's lots of little hidden details too, little creatures hidden around that hopefully the viewer will, travel through and find these little things. They're like little gifts.
The kids find different stuff because they're shorter. There's all of this stuff down at the lower level that you have to be small to find them. And meanwhile, we spent a lot of time 15 feet up on top of scaffolding, making stuff details that I'm not sure anyone but us will ever notice.
Some of which we won't even notice. the name of the piece is Quagmire, and a quagmire means a couple of things. It's like a swamp, or it can also mean like a hard place or a precarious situation. And I think
problem.
A problem, yeah. And I think of the swamp as being a sort of a landscape of metamorphosis. It's a place where anything that sort of enters the swamp becomes part of the swamp, and it's a place where growth and decay happen very rapidly. It's an environment that swallows up structures of all sorts, or at least metaphorically, this is what it means to me. And it's a landscape that's always kind of transforming. So that this idea that this would be a landscape that we're drawing that's going to be transforming all the time and evolving and morphing, that's kind of built into it, as well as this idea that we as a culture, as a species, are in a quagmire right now, being that our population has hit 7 billion people, and we're the most populous mammal on Earth, and I mean, cities are just growing out of control, and everything that we eat, everything that we use to build our houses, everything comes from someplace. It all has to come from the land. So every building comes from like a hole in the ground. So it just seems impossible to me that if we keep on going in this direction, trying to keep our standard of living at this height, that we won't run out of resources. I mean, we're heading that way. We're hitting peak oil. Like it's really, it causes me a lot of anxiety, and I don't have answers for what needs to be done exactly. But I guess we just wanted to call attention to the fact that we are in this situation right now. And I don't know if
we're addressing that, but it is without telling people what to value, it is bringing up what do we value in light that knowing that things change and that things are changing. On the other hand, wetlands are oftentimes really endangered habitats, and the animals that live there are going extinct. And amphibians being on a huge decline, one of the most iconic of the swamp creatures. And it's amphibians themselves having these really profound metamorphic states. Also insects being the other, which aren't going extinct so fast. Insects put humans in place too, because they're not going anywhere. Insects still rule the world. But we're looking back, part of our influence, or one of the inspirations for Quagmire is the greatest swamp that ever was, which was the Carboniferous period in natural history, which was over 300 million years ago, before trees evolved, when the world was a giant primordial swamp. There's also coral, lots of coral reefs in the ocean. We're making the atmosphere, the airspace, the vaporous kind of amorphous zone in the sky and in the water, blending in with the land and the trees and these really crystallized, vivid forms and animals and plants. And that exchange between the air, the atmosphere, the plants and trees, water, animals, rocks, all of that stuff.
And people and houses and an industrialized landscape. Yeah, and I think I'm trying to draw connections between like a cityscape and an industrial kind of wasteland by putting them next to each other, just to show that like cities are built with raw materials, and raw materials have to come from the earth. Like when you're in a city, you can kind of think of it as being this different sort of zone that is outside of nature completely, but I want to show that they're completely connected. And just as we are one species, within a network of species, the things that we see around us come from the earth. And it's so easy to forget that. So I think that's important, as well as calling up the notion of deep time. When we're looking at the Carboniferous, it's a way of thinking about the fact that even human existence on Earth is like a small blip in time, and we have this idea that things will just go on forever, but they won't in how they are now, at least for us. However, the world will live on, and I just think that a lot of the decisions we make as a society are very short-sighted. I think that we do things for quick economic gain, and it's a losing battle to do that.
We're trying to put the human situation in perspective, both in time and place, in a nutshell. And that's just a spot from which to reflect, to acknowledge it and look at it. And we hope the audience will do that too. We're trying to do that ourselves. Even to just a city, it's too big to see it all. That's again part of the universe, trying to make this thing expansive and complex. That's what it is.